Let me just say, this was the cabinet minute that wouldn't die, and it didn't until I drove a stake through its heart. And I am pleased to have been here today to assist the ICAC with its inquiries. This was a bad piece of public policy, and as a result of the decision I took, it was dead in the water. I'm pleased that the ICAC are fulfilling their role in our democratic system, which is to expose corruption or attempts at corruption and to make sure that we have a robust and corrupt-proof as possible public service here in New South Wales. As I've said previously, I want to pay tribute to the honest public servants, those who advised me, those who worked with me in my office as well as in the public service, and worked with me to ensure that this proposal from Australian Water Holdings was not adopted by a Community Labor government.
What advice made it bad public policy?
Pardon me?
Do you think was it ever close to being adopted?
No.
What made it bad public policy from what you saw?
The proposal that was put forward by Australian Water Holdings did not represent value for money. It potentially contravened the Water Industry Competition Act. It was contrary to the Solicitor General's opinion that the matter was solicited and could be dealt with by way of direct negotiation. Furthermore, the company, Australian Water Holdings, did not have the requisite expertise to do what it proposed to do, which was to provide, operate all water infrastructure in the Northwest Growth Centre. If I can say this, the proposal by Australian Water Holdings reminded me of the airport rail link proposal. That is a contract by where the government would have assumed all the risk and the private sector would have reaped all the reward.
You were asked at the time inside the hearing, why didn't you report it to ICAC at the time? Could you get your explanation of that now?
Yeah, that is a fair question, and it's a question I can understand why people ask. The reality is, what came before me was a bad piece of public policy. There was concern raised by Sydney Water about the minute, but the concern raised by Sydney Water was a concern if the minute was approved. That is, Sydney Water's concern was approving the minute would have corrupted the processes by which government dealt with infrastructure proposals. At no point did anyone from Sydney Water or DPC, or indeed did Mr. Tripodi or Mr. Obeid disclose to me any information or raise any concerns about ownership of the company or authorship of the minute. And I want to be clear on that point. The concerns that were raised were about the approval of the minute. The reality is that minute, once I read it and received advice, stood no chance of being approved. I can understand why Sydney Water had the concerns they did, but in the end they were unwarranted.
How much pressure were you under from Eddie Obeid and Joe Tripodi in regard to this?
This is a matter that I was lobbied. I was lobbied by Eddie Obeid, I was lobbied by Joe Tripodi, and I said no. Look, a premier gets lobbied regularly. It's part of being job of premier. People put forward their ideas. Sometimes they're good ideas, sometimes they're without merit. This idea was completely without merit.
But on reflection now, looking back, was it lobbying harder than normal?
The information that's before the ICAC today is not information that was available to me, or to Sydney Water, or to the Department of Premier and Cabinet at the time. It was information that was being kept secret. And I guess as a general observation, that's the nature of corruption. It tends to happen in secret.
Do you regret not raising it with ICAC?
No.
Do you think Barry O'Farrell should be called as a witness?
I would say that it would be fair to ask others about their relationship with this proposal and whether they felt it should have been referred to ICAC. And I would include in that Mr. O'Farrell, Mr. Pearce, and Mr. Rees.
Were you offended with some of the suggestions inside there about the nature of your relationship in a political sense, both with Joe Tripodi and Eddie Obeid, and even the ridiculous sort of powder room suggestion.
It did offend me, the idea that somebody would violate the Premier's powder room. I mean, come on, there's nothing sacred anymore.
Did it offend you that the Premier has a powder room? Does Barry O'Farrell have a powder room?
Well, to be technical, the word powder room was never used by me or my staff. Barry O'Farrell, as far as I know, probably does have a powder room, but you'd have to ask him that question.
What do you think this has done, this ICAC, looking back now for the Labor Party in New South Wales? What damage has it done?
The hearings that we saw last year, the hearings where we saw on display the way that Mr. Obeid and Mr. MacDonald used government as a personal plaything for their own greedy ends. That disgusts me, it sickens me, and I can only imagine the damage that it's done to people's trust in government, to people's trust in the Labor Party, and people's trust in their elected representatives. The reality is there were very good people in the Labor government who represented their communities with honor and distinction and who did very good things. Mr. Obeid and Mr. MacDonald dealt a great blow to that trust and that honor. Can I say, this particular attempt at corruption did not succeed. It did not succeed because two women in powerful positions simply said no. Now, I'm not going to preempt the findings of this inquiry. That is for the Commissioner to do. But I would note one of the most distressing aspects of this inquiry is that it cuts across party lines. It seems that in this case, we have people from both sides of Parliament, Labour and Liberal, who have engaged potentially in corrupt activity. That to me is a distressing part of this, that we have seen our current government drug in to corrupt activity, potentially corrupt activity, and that is a blow to people's trust in the democratic system of government. That's why we need a commission like the ICAC.
But it's a bit late when it gets to ICAC, isn't it? What is it about the system of politics in New South Wales that allows these sorts of activities to continue?
In fact, I wouldn't say it is the system. If anything, the Australian Water Holdings hearings show that the system works. What you have here are honest public servants, honourable public servants, both those who are in the public sector, those who worked as ministerial advisors, and those who were elected. Honest people who did the right thing. This hearing, if anything, shows the system works. But what we need an ICAC for are those individuals who would choose to put their own personal gain ahead of public good. That has no role in our democratic system. Thanks, folks.